Hello again, it's Jess or JashiiCorrin, and welcome back for my monthly bullet journal setup. In today's video, I'm going to be setting up for April 2019, but before we get into that, as per usual, we're going to have a look at how this month is going. So as you'll remember from my last monthly plan with me, my theme for March was magic. And thank you again for all of those who voted on the poll. This was a really fun theme to do. In terms of the layouts that I had, we had my splash page, my monthly log, gratitude page, habits and steps trackers, my meal log, social media scheduler, my daily doodles, which you can see I'm a little bit behind on, a page that I set up and didn't really use, and then it was straight on into my weekly pages. For the first week of March, I decided to try my hand at daily logging, but I found that it wasn't really for me, so the week after this I went back to my weekly layouts. This is the week that I'm currently using. I then have a spread here for the last week of March. And then we're into planning for April. For the month coming, you guys decided you wanted to see a Botanicals theme. So I have a lot of plant-related decoration in my monthly setup. Before I hand you guys over to the time-lapse, just a reminder that any of the equipment I use in today's setup is linked in the description box below. For the month coming, I've decided to step away from the 4-section splash page with the mini calendar, the to-do list, goals and quote sections. I've been finding that I don't really use these, so instead I'm just opting in for something that's decorative. As you can see here, I've already gone in with a pencil to map out where I want most of the plant doodles to go. I've organised this so that the negative space between them leaves the letter A for April. This style of plant doodles was very much inspired by Christina of My Life in a Bullet, and there's a link to her Instagram and YouTube channel in the description box below. I also used these plant doodles back in December as part of the weekly layouts I was setting up, where I mimicked other bullet journalists' layouts in my own journal. I didn't actually get to finish going through all the journalists you suggested, so I'd be keen to do a few more of those recreations at some stage. I'd also just like to apologise for the lighting changes that you're seeing in today's video. I actually filmed this setup across a few different days, because 1, as we're starting to approach the end of term, I have more to do in my evenings. And 2, also as we get further away from summer, the sun is starting to set earlier. As I said in pretty much every video last year, eventually I'll get around to actually getting some proper lighting for my filming. The decoration I have for pretty much all of my layouts in this setup is based around just a few different doodles. We have 3 different types of flowers, so the one with the circular or oval shaped petals, one with the heart shaped petals, and the one that's quite small, just a very simple circle with little petals coming off it. Those smaller ones in particular, I just use to fill spaces that don't look like they have enough ink around them. For the leaves, I have a few more different styles. There's the larger striped leaves, the multi-branch plant with small circular leaves, the one that essentially looks like a string of bow ties, the one that's a bit more like a fern, and lastly the one that almost has teardrop-shaped leaves, which are filled with lines. Repeating these different plant doodles in a random order is how I decorated these pages. I didn't use a set order to repeat in, because I wanted the decoration to look a little bit more organic. I did, however, try to loosely alternate between a few leaves and the flowers at the very least. With the cover page finished, it's on to my monthly log. Before talking about my monthly log, I just wanted to mention the importance of counting. When setting up my April monthly pages, I constantly got myself confused as to whether April had 30 or 31 days. Spoilers, it has 30 days. You can see in the grid that I've drawn out, I've included 30 days, but when I listed the numbers for each day in April down the bottom, I did 31. I didn't actually notice this at the time, and it wasn't until I was most of the way through my decoration that I realised. Initially, I thought I'd stuffed up the number in the grid, and I was kicking myself pretty hard, but thankfully it was just the list of numbers. The annoying thing about this was though, as I went through and set up the rest of my pages, I was constantly second guessing myself, thinking that I didn't have enough spaces or that I had too many. As I've mentioned previously, as my mum says, we measure twice and cut once. As it fits for quilting, it also fits for bullet journaling. My monthly log is also one of those pages that I really just don't find myself flipping back to very often. I tried in March to make this happen by starting the month doing daily logging, where I didn't record my events and only had the tasks that I needed to get done. As I mentioned, this wasn't very successful, so I went back to weekly logs as soon as another Monday came around. For April, I'm trying to motivate myself to use this by changing up the style I'm using for my monthly log. I've included a calendar layout, as you can see, as well as a list for the days of the month down the bottom of the left page. And then on the right, I have space for the tasks that I want to get done during the month. That space is essentially acting like a brain dump page, as I found that recently I do seem to have a lot on my mind. Finishing off the decoration around the calendar layout, I moved on to the decoration for the right-hand page. If I were to do this one again, I'd probably put the plant doodles down the bottom of the page and the title at the top, but I'm still pretty pleased with how it turned out. For the titles in my April setup, I'm just using a simple all caps font, where the first letter is done using a green Staedtler Tri-Plus fineliner, and the rest of the letters are written using my Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in the M size. I first tried using the S size, but I felt like it didn't really let the title stand out enough. I wanted something a little bit bolder. After going over that title with the thicker pen, it's on to my habits and steps trackers. For April, I've decided to use those square style trackers, which I used for my improvements trackers in January and February. If you hadn't already seen my video on that style of tracker, there's a link to it in the cards above. In that one I show you how I go about setting up this style of tracker to make sure that the segments are as well spaced as possible, as well as talking about some of the specific details that are related to the improvements tracker. For each of the trackers I have here, I've separated them into 31 spaces, and this was done just by separating the squares into 32 segments and combining the two in the top left corner. These trackers do take a while to set up as there's a lot of line ruling involved, but I really like the way they look when they're all filled in. For what I've set up here, I have enough space to record my completion of 5 habits and up to 10,000 steps each day. To add a bit of colour to the page, I then go in with my Tombow dual brush marker in the colour 173. This isn't a colour I use very often, but it is a good colour match to the Staedtler Tri-Plus fine liner that I'm using. After my colouring, I then go and put down the titles for each page. I decided to have the habits title at the top and the steps title at the bottom, so that I'd have balance between the decorated sections in my spread. As I mentioned before, this is what I would have ideally liked to have had for my monthly log as well. Although my titles at this stage don't look as bold as the one on my monthly log, I do go in when finishing this spread off to add some width to each black letter. Once the decoration was finished, I then went in with my S-size Pitt Artist Pen to write down the day numbers on my trackers. Although this went well for my steps tracker, when it came to doing the numbering for my habits tracker, I stuffed this up multiple times. At a glance though, these stuff-ups aren't very noticeable, so I decided just to leave them as they were. As I've talked about previously, I find that for a lot of small mistakes that I make in my journal, it actually is a bit more detrimental to try and fix them because it just ends up drawing attention to the mistakes. Things like spelling errors in my to-do lists, or like the numbering issue that I have here, are actually made a lot less noticeable by not fixing them. Moving on from my habits and steps trackers, the next spread I have contains my daily doodles grid and a page which is going to be new for me in April. For the doodles, I've separated the page into 30 individual boxes, which are different sizes of either squares or rectangles. I've drawn out a border for the grid as well, which I colour in green using that Tombow marker again. I felt that the green border better tied this page to the trackers spread before it. For the titles, I'm again just using that simple all caps font and then adding 2 small decorations of plant doodles. The page I have on the left I'm calling my I Am page, and the inspiration for this page came from an episode of season 3 of Queer Eye, where the Fab Five are helping Robert, who is preparing for his wedding day. In the episode, it becomes apparent that Robert says a lot of negative things to himself about himself. So one of the activities that Karamo, the culture and lifestyle expert, has Robert do is stand in a mirror and say positive things about himself. Each positive thing that he says is written on the mirror so that Robert can look into the mirror and see himself surrounded by all of the positive things that he is. As someone who does use a lot of negative self-talk, this really resonated with me. So I wanted to dedicate a page in my setup for April to show myself some appreciation. Last but not least, we have my social media scheduler. This one is taking the exact same form that it has previously, with the left-hand page dedicated to my Instagram posting, and the right-hand page for my Facebook posts, YouTube videos, and growth tracking. I'd also just like to take a moment to thank those of you who do follow, like, or subscribe to my various social media accounts. Having you guys on board is awesome, and I really enjoy getting to share my journal and such with you all. Instead of using the green Tombow to tie this page to the previous ones, I decided to use a matching colour of green washi tape with a watercolour effect on it. I first lay the washi down on the left page and then rip the strip in half long ways to create a half strip for the right page. I've used this technique quite a few times previously, and I really like the way it looks. To finish this page off, I then just go in again with my M-size Pitt artist pen to make the title a little bit more bold. Alrighty, and that's where we're going to leave it for today. So as you can see, we have my cover page, my monthly log with space for a running to-do list on the right here, my habits and steps trackers, my I am page and my Doodles page, and then last but not least, my social media scheduler. Thank you for watching. If you liked today's video, please do make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and wanted to, feel free to subscribe to my channel to see the videos I release every Thursday and Sunday. I'll be back again on Thursday with another weekly Plan With Me video. And so until next time, bye!